Wins,
yeah,
she is undoubtedly the greatest female fighter of all time.
Not even close.
Yeah, I'm happy you saying this. Because I know Demetrius Slater's but it's true.
I actually think it's not a question right now.
Oh, okay.
I think it's not a question right now. I know she has one less Olympic gold, and I know she has the one loss, but in terms of the level of competition, that has to factor. Who she has fought compared to who Clarissa, and by the way, that's not a knock on Clarissa. She can only fight who's presented to her.
No one in her weight class, unfortunately.
She is unfortunately, I always compare it to Demetrius Johnson in MMA. Demetrius, unfortunately, cannot be considered the greatest just because the guys that he was fighting at flyweight at the time weren't the creme de la creme, weren't the level of John Jones or GSP. It's the same thing with Clarissa versus Katie.
From the time that Clarissa Shields fought Savannah Marshall till now, we will have seen not one, not two, but 3 Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano fights. Not one, but 2 Chantel Cameron fights. Compare that to the girls that Clarissa has fought since the Savannah Marshall fight. How does the name of Danielle Perkins stack up with an undisputed champion like Chantel Cameron?
It doesn't.
40-year-old fighter with only 5 professional fights who, before that, had never even fought in a 10-rounder? You're supposed to compare that to Chantel? Vanessa Joannese. How does the name of Vanessa Joannese stack up with the name of Amanda Serrano? How does the name of Maricela Cornejo or Lonnie Daniels? There's no comparison. This shouldn't even be conversation, but if it is, it's because Clarissa is insistent. She's the greatest woman of all times, and there is a small rabble of individuals, a vocal minority that echoes that sentiment for no other reason than Clarissa is the same race as they are. I ain't got time to beat around the bush.
And I ain't gonna bullshit ya.
That kind of reasoning is no reasoning at all. It's not logic, it's just favoritism.
I don't give a shit about your favoritism.
Because I ain't Irish. And being Irish ain't the reason I think Katie Taylor's resume is light years ahead of Clarissa's. Shouldn't even be a conversation. Cognitive dissonance and disingenuous arguments are the reason it is.
How so many American journos and periodicals rank Clarissa Shields ahead of Katie Taylor on their pound-for-pound lists? What's the reasoning there? What's the logic? Whoever picks up more titles that nobody is holding is number one?
In more barren weight classes where there's no one to fight,
that makes her number one.
So I couldn't tell you how refreshing it was to see both Ade Oladipo and Ariel Helwani echo the sentiments I've often expressed here on this channel. Right now,
Katie's ahead of Clarissa by a country mile right now.
By the way, there is a conversation to be had. The narrative will change dramatically if Amanda wins as well, because Amanda, all of a sudden, she can change. This is almost a referendum on the first 2 fights, because if Amanda wins, especially if she wins in dominant, decisive fashion, she will then say, you see, I deserve to win.
No, I'm not having that. No.
She will do it.
She will do it, but it's up to us to not accept that narrative. The narrative is the first 2 fights were incredibly close. I think it should be one apiece.
Who did you think won the first?
Katie.
Second?
Amanda.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I think, and I'd hate for Amanda. Look, I'm fans of both. I'm friends of both.
You're going to tell us the story that you were in Dallas.
No.
Shoes, you went for breakfast.
I was going to say that. But I would hate for Amanda, when it's all said and done, not to... 3-0 doesn't tell the true story of this trilogy if Katie wins. Because if we look back on the record books and all we see is 3-0, it won't really tell us the story of it. I'd hate for Amanda not to have one.
Fear not, Ade, because for Amendia, who I love, and loves me, I think the third time's gonna be the charm for Amendia Serrano, and I, like Ade Oladipo, believe that they should actually be 1-1 with each other going into the trilogy, going into the third fight, because I scored the last one for Amanda. On top of Katie Taylor being deducted a point, I just don't understand how Amanda didn't get the decision. But I believe all of that is about to change this Friday.
What I appreciated most about this segment is that the analysis was genuine and thoughtful. You could tell that both Ade and Ariel knew the fighters and knew what they were talking about, as opposed to what we get from some American pundits who cover these fighters.
They just kind of gloss over them.
You can make that inference by how many of them rank Clarissa Shields ahead of Katie Taylor, going off the same cookie-cutter comments that you could read on a Wikipedia page, that Clarissa's been undisputed 2 or 3 times, without delving deeper to see how she got there, who'd she fight, and how do those fighters compare to the fighters that Katie has fought, or the fighters that Amanda has fought.
You can just tell that they don't give it much thought, and Katie and Amanda deserve a lot better than that.
They do not take a back seat to Clarissa Shields, please.
I will echo Ariel Helwani's sentiment that Katie's already greater than Clarissa right now, without going 3-0 in the trilogy. I'll go as far as saying that even if Amanda beats Katie this weekend, and I think she's going to, Katie's resume is still better than Clarissa's.
If Amanda beats Katie, you could argue that Amanda's resume is better than Clarissa's.
Because who did Clarissa Shields fight that compares to Katie Taylor? What scalp did she collect that compares to that one?
He's a hell of a fighter.
What about Brian Norman against Devin Haney? What a fight,
That's
huh?
a hell of a fight, right?
That's a tremendous
I'm
fight.
about to tell y'all my take on it, right?
Okay, tell us.
And everybody gonna think I'm crazy. I like Devin.
You like Devin?
I like Devin.
I don't think you're that crazy.
Everybody think I'm crazy
Really?
when I say
Well,
it.
Norman's coming off an incredible knockout. He's looked great.
Yeah.
Why do you like Haney?
I think Brian Norman is a hell of a fighter, But I think if Devin fight the way that he fought his last fight, and a lot of people may have criticized him, but if he do that, I think Brian Norman lose.
Really?
Yeah.
Just because he'll outbox him, he'll outsmart
Won't
him?
be able to hit him.
Right.
It's a double-edged sword. Shakur's evaluation of the fight. What happens if Devin fights Brian the same way that he fought Jose? Bear in mind that William Skull fought a very similar fight against Canelo Alvarez, and it didn't work.
That same weekend.
William Skull's strategy was not painfully different from Devin's.
Many years ago, when Guillermo Rigondeaux fought John Riel Casimiro, he fought the same kind of fight that they fought. Jermaine Ortiz tried to do that with Teofimo.
Didn't work.
And given that Turkey LL Sheik has made his feelings known, that he doesn't want any more Tom and Jerry fights. He doesn't want one fighter making it the other fighter's job to chase him around the ring.
Because that's not a fight, and you're not fighting. The other guy's trying to. You're trying to avoid it.
It's a double-edged sword, that if Devin Haney tries that strategy again, he may not get the consideration that he got in the Jose Ramirez fight. So there is that to consider.
What else?
The other side of the coin. You don't get the same openings from Devin that you got from Jin Sasaki, Derek Cuevas, Giovanni Santillán. Devin is a very different fighter to those fighters.
Those fighters were there to be hit, where Devin may not be.
Double-edged sword.
I said it in my previous video, and I'll say it here again. Brian Norman cannot make the mistake of looking for a single shot to do Devin Haney. A single punch or a counter. No, you've got to throw punches in bunches. You've got to throw combinations. Maybe the first 2 punches don't land, or the third, but maybe the 4th one does. And that's the one that does the damage you need it to.
You have to sell out with Devin, because if nothing else, you know you're not under threat of being stopped. You know he doesn't knock people out. You have to roll the dice.
If what it takes to land is to take one, to give one, you have to take that chance, because you know Devin doesn't punch as hard as you do. If you both land at the same time, odds are your punch is gonna do more damage than his. You have to walk him down. You gotta beat him up. You can't rely on a single punch, landing a single shot to do him, because one may not be enough.
The window of opportunity to land that single shot, as hard as it is, it may not open.
So you have to open him up. You essentially have to open up that window to open up Devin Haney and do damage. A lot is made of how many times he was knocked down in the Ryan Garcia fight. But you know what he wasn't?
What?
He wasn't knocked out.
Yeah, Ryan didn't knock him out.
So it's a double-edged sword. Devin's strategy against Jose may not work against Brian, and Brian's strategies so far may not work against Devin. Shakur likes Devin for the fight. I chalk that up to solidarity. Finesse, fence, and fiddle fighters showing solidarity to one another. We know what kind of fighter Shakur is. He's a boxer, and so is Devin.
No coincidence, he likes him for the fight.
Though I happen to think boxing could do with more bruisers and brawlers like Brian than fence and fiddle fighters like Devin.
I think the American boxing scene would be better off with another action fighter than another finesse, fence, and fiddle fighter.
We'll see how it shakes out in November.
I don't care about, like, everyone, people keep building a name off of my name. I was here for it, and I did see it as a massive fight. You know, it is, again, it was a better fight for me, in my opinion. You know, probably would have generated, I don't know, obviously with the Saudi, I don't know. But it was a massive fight in the UK. We tried to make that fight. We tried to make the Callum Smith fight. We tried to make all these fights, and people went other routes, and we've seen it clear in our eyes, inside of our eyeballs. This person had they had Anthony there. This person had Anthony there. They chose to fight each other. They chose to fight each other, and then you go other people. They go in other routes, and then people come for me and say, "Why is the fight not happening?" I say, "You're not joking. Are you actually joking with me?" That it makes sense. That is a fight everyone wanted. We tried to make that fight happen. Now I've got Benavidez in front of me. In my opinion, more dangerous. You know, he's a world champion, all that kind of stuff, than all these other guys that you just mentioned. And I'm agreed to fight him within less than 3 minutes. Don't ever come for my character. I will fight anybody.
This is cyclical with Anthony Yarde, and it's always been this way from the very beginning when he was still an unbeaten fighter and just coming through. I remember the critics asking, when is Anthony going to step up in class? When are they going to get him a step-up fight?
I remember how many people were dissatisfied with Anthony's quality of competition back then. And then you fast forward, he goes to Russia, Chelyabinsk, Russia, to Sergey Kovalev's town, to his neck of the woods. He fights that guy and gives him a hell of a fight.
That silenced the critics for a little while, though most people agreed. Spirited effort that he gave, he didn't give himself the best chance at victory in the build-up. And it was the same with the Artur Better Be fight. It's the same way now with the Benavidez fight.
The moral of the story, Anthony Yarde's not afraid to fight anybody.
You can't honestly think that this guy's afraid of Buatsi or afraid of Smith, and that's why those fights didn't happen when he's fighting the likes of Kovalev, Beterbiev, now Benavidez.
You calmed.
If the question is, then why didn't the Buatsi fight happen, or why didn't Smith fight happen? I don't know, but it's not because Anthony was scared of those guys.
That's what it ain't.
The only indictment against Anthony Yarde is, given what he does from one big fight to the next, he doesn't give himself the best chance at victory. He goes from fighting very low-level fighters to top-shelf, top-tier guys.
As Anthony said, he spoke to Turkey personally. 3 fighters rejected Benavidez, and Jose Benavidez Sr. publicly said it yesterday.
Eddie Hearn came out and said we never got the number we were looking for Callum Smith. So Callum is one of them, presumably. I don't know if you want to say it or you don't want to say it, or
I can say the names.
No. Yeah. But again, we cannot forget the history. Less than a week ago, we heard Paul Smith on TalkSport. We heard Stephen Smith on Boxing Social and many others. And we heard Callum Smith himself say that this wasn't about money. If the fight presented himself, they would not fight Anthony Yarde and fight David Benavidez.
So something's going on here. People ain't being honest.
So it makes them look like liars, because you've turned down Saudi Arabian money. You haven't fought Anthony Yarde, and you've declined the opportunity to fight David Benavidez.
It was 4 people they had. 4 names, including my name. Buatsi is one of them.
Yes.
Callum Smith is the other.
Yes.
And then what was the other name?
Ramirez
was the other one. And then he goes, and Anthony Yarde. They were in talks with all these people, and he said it to me personally. He goes, I want you because I feel like you're the most entertaining, and you've got the best profile.
There are 2 sides to every story. That was Team Yarde's side of it. Team Smith's, according to Callum Smith himself, Tunde, I was never offered the fight in Saudi. He only mentioned he wanted to make the fight. The number Eddie was talking about was from the PBC, which was less than what I got for Buatsi.
That doesn't surprise me. That's what I initially thought. Whatever Callum Smith made in Saudi Arabia with Joshua Buatsi was likely more money, and more money up front than what the PBC was offering him to come to America to fight David.
PBC don't have the resources these days to overpay fighters, overpay a Brit to come to America when that puts them in the hole. That makes the pay-per-view that much likelier to fail, to flop, if you overpay a Callum Smith.
I knew they weren't going to.
But apparently they don't want to overpay their own fighter either. I mean, there's a reason that David Benavidez ended up bending the knee after asserting that he was a Vegas fighter and he wanted to base himself out of Las Vegas. There's a reason. He's now boxing on one of Turkey's shows. And it's because the PBC cannot afford to overpay him either.
Forget about overpay him. I don't think they can afford to pay him.
For the PBC, they stand a better chance of turning over a profit if they rent out David Benavidez to Turkey LL Sheikh and just collect their cut than if they use whatever money they have to do a show for him. That is more expensive.
Because then you have to pay David, you have to pay David's opponent, you have to pay all the undercard fighters, the production team that's supposed to be shooting all of this, you have to pay for the featurettes, the promotion.
You have to pay, and this would all be for something that you don't even know if it's going to turn over a profit. Whereas doing things this way, renting out David Benavidez, you get to turn over a profit without spending any of your own money. Sending David to Saudi or allowing him to fight on one of Turkey's shows is a much bigger statement about the state of the PBC than people realize. Because if David really were a big box office draw and a big ticket seller, you would never outsource him to somebody else's show. You could do his show with the confidence that it's gonna make money.
Irrespective of what you have to pay to get it done. Irrespective of what you have to pay a Callum Smith to bring him to America.
If David were doing real numbers on pay-per-view, they wouldn't rent him out to someone else. At this point for the PBC, doing David's fights is more trouble than it's worth.
That's the statement.
The bit about Callum Smith and Anthony Yarde and those fights not materializing, in time, they still might. You have to imagine a light heavyweight division beyond the Better Beeve and Bivol trilogy, beyond Better Beeve and Bivol. What remains?
Who remains?
David Benavidez, Anthony Yarde, Callum Smith, Joshua Buatsi. These are the somebodies, aside from Dimitri and Artur. So now that Callum is not fighting David Benavidez, and he is not fighting Anthony Yarde either, I anticipate they may elect to do a homecoming fight in Liverpool against some ham and egg guy, just somebody that Callum can keep busy with until such a time as he can either challenge for the full title or full titles or be elevated to full champion.
Callum may yet see himself become a two-weight world champion. There are several paths to get there.
All the bickering with Team Yarde is really just much ado about nothing.
The door is not closed for a Smith versus Yarde fight or a Smith versus Benavidez fight.
Those fights could still happen.